Alright, so my name is Nick. You're watching a video from O3 Drop, and today what I want to talk about is my yellow and green Frieza deck. Now, I went to the Orlando Regionals. At the Regionals, I was playing a blue-green Vegeta. It was Hand Destruction with Broly. Uh, now, I only lost 3 matches. I went 6-3. One loss was to a red-blue Vegeta, which was a pretty cool deck. Another loss was to one Mecha Frieza. And then my third loss was to a deck similar to this one. Now, when I lost to it, honestly, I wasn't even mad. I had never seen anything like it before. It was really interesting. The person I played against had a few interesting decisions as far as cards went, or maybe I do. Who knows? I could be the bad one here. But I told myself that when it happened, I wanted to go home, play around with the idea, and see if I could make something happen. And so this at this point is what I've come up with. Now, I did just play in locals this past weekend. It had about 42 people, and I came in third place. Honestly, I probably could have taken the whole thing home, except for two things. One, I decked myself out. Basically, I knew on my final play that I had to make a play that turn, so I played a few things that made me draw cards, and I didn't end up doing it. I only needed a 5K combo. If I'd had one more 5K combo, I would have won. So that's something we're going to talk about as I go through the deck list. So without anything else, let's go ahead and get into this. Now, with Frieza, obviously, this is the Frieza card where you pop one of your own battle cards, you untap one energy before you awaken into 1-2 awaken, and then you draw one card. This is amazing for cycling through your deck. So that way, maybe you don't get the best starting hand, but you get one or two Avenging Friezas or something like that in your hand. You can cycle through and start getting to the cards you need. I rarely played any of these 1-drops as energies. Most of the time, my energies were probably going to be the 16s, one cooler, maybe one or two Vegetas after I didn't need them anymore. So yeah, these 1-drops are just critical to the deck. Now, in the tournament I was playing on Sunday, I only had 3 Frieza's Call, and I didn't have the Sorbet. The thing that I like about Frieza's Call is it lets you pick between the Frieza or the Goldo depending on the situation. So, for example, my opponent starts with, they go first, they lay down Majin Buu, they draw a card, they in turn. Well, if I have a Goldo out, I can lay out my Goldo, tap the Majin Buu, attack it with my leader, and that gets rid of a 5K combo piece for them. So it was a really strong combo throughout the entire day. Also, same thing with the Green Gokus. They light the Green Goku, they draw a card. I can tap it, kill it. They don't get to combo with it. Now, the main reason I'm going to switch now to Sorbet is just to have the extra 5K combo piece. I ended up in the tournament last weekend with, I think, 2 Frieza's Calls in my hand at the very end of the game. If they were 2 Sorbets, I would have won. So I'm going to switch to Sorbet, see how I like it. I definitely think it's a good way to go. So yeah, I mean, other than that though, this is pretty self-explanatory. Play it down, use the effect to it, pop it, move on with life. So then you get into your 10K boosts over here. These are pretty self-explanatory. If you're new to the game, whatever color deck, you need to run 4 of these in. They're amazing. One thing that I've seen newer players do is they'll put these down as energy. You never ever want to do that unless it's like a life or death situation. Like, unless someone has a gun to your head, you don't ever want to put these down. It's so powerful at the end of the game when you're either swinging for game or they're swinging in on you to be able to drop 2 or 3 of these things and save yourself. Like, it's so good. Don't ever put this as energy unless you have to. So then we move on to the Destructive Occupation Frieza. I think when this first came out, because there's one for every color. Sorry, green. When this first came out, I looked at this and I said to myself, like, man, these cards are really good, and at some point, these are going to see a lot of play. And now that's starting to happen. When it first came out, I was still playing around with Vegeta, so I was using the Gohan. I think these cards are extremely good. Some people still aren't super sold on them, but, I mean, you save yourself and gain more control, and especially in this deck, because what happens is, if you have that open energy, and especially because you can use a green energy for this, So you basically get out one of your yellow cards that you can pop for your ability while paying a green energy for it. So you're not wasting your cold bloodless energy or anything like that. So the thing is too, with this deck, you have to be willing to pop literally anything. Over the course of the tournament, I literally every single Frieza that you see in this deck, I popped. I popped this Frieza, I popped that Frieza, I popped that one, and that, like, every single one. It doesn't matter. It gets popped for the ability. So I think a lot of you are familiar with this card by now. I think what really pushes this card over the top is the fact that you do not have to discard for the double strike. If you can get this off with a cooler combo, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's just deadly. But a lot of times also, if your opponent's playing really aggro, if they're trying to hit you in the face as fast as possible, that means more than likely their battle cards are going to be tapped. And so what that lets you do is you can then lay down the Frieza, pop the 2-tap battle cards, and then you get double strike, dual attack for the turn. Now, a lot of times when you attack with this guy, don't waste any combos unless you think you can go for game or something along those lines. Because what happens is that's 2 attacks with double strike, so your opponent has to block that. So if they don't block that, obviously it's going to push them closer to losing. And so even if you just hit with, 15k, that's at least 1 5k from their hand they have to get rid of. And so the whole game is about hand control. And so if you make your opponent discard 2 cards with this, plus you're getting rid of 2 cards from the battlefield, it's so strong. It really is. A lot of times this is another card that I would end up using for a combo, or not a combo piece, an energy, just because I knew I played 4 of them. So then we move on to the 7-drop Frieza. This card, I would never evolve it. You never evolve into this card. You don't want to do it. It's not a thing. The only reason this card is in my deck is for the 30k triple strike. So my combo with this is I will find a way to discard this early. I'll use it as a combo piece or something like that. Then if I get to 7 energies and I haven't won yet, I can tap out, play the cooler, and then bring this back from the discard pile, triple strike for game. It did happen multiple times during the tournament. It was always really strong. It's a 30k triple striker. Now there is also the full power Frieza, which has blocker. I think it's a 25k triple striker. You could go for that one. That's not a bad choice. But for me personally, I want that extra 5k. I want to hit for game. That's my goal with this card. So I have 2 of these. And then obviously 3 of the cooler. So what this card in particular does is you basically remove one of your battle cards from the game. And then you put 2 of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode and bring back a Frieza or cooler from the graveyard. So with this card, if you need the triple striker, you can grab the triple striker. However, let's say your opponent's got like a Jiren and a Gohan out in active mode. You can go ahead and use this card to put both of them in rest mode, pull the 4-drop back out of your discard pile, and pop them both. And then again, that's still a double strike dual attack. Plus, you have the double strike 30k here on cooler. Now, the other thing to keep in mind with this is you can pop that Frieza card at the end of your turn. So, for example, you can pull this Frieza out and then attack with it, and at the end of your turn, pop it, get 2 energies back so you have your Bloodlust active. And then next turn, do the same thing all over again. Because this is a once per turn ability. So now let's move on to some of the green cards. The first one, Android 16. This is really good in this meta. A lot of decks want to kill you really quickly. Pretty much any Vegeta deck, Trunks, even Mecha Frieza wants to ramp up and kill you quickly. This kind of tells them to back up. Like, this does not let them get at you very fast. They have to deal with it or else you're going to kill their battle cards. Pretty self-explanatory. I also like that it only costs 3. Because one thing about this deck is on that, 3rd turn or so, there's not anything major. Like, you're really, with this deck, you want to get to turn 4 and 5. That's when you can start playing real stuff. And so, at turn 3, normally I have 1 or 2 Friezas on the field. Like, normally I have, this plus an Avenging Frieza just sitting there waiting. So, with this Android 16, I can tap out, play it down, pop one of my other Friezas, get the yellow back, and I still have Bloodlust active for their turn. That's the main thing. With this deck, you always want to have one yellow energy active for the Bloodlust, with the exception of maybe your first turn or two. So then we move on to the Vegeta. Now, playing against your opponents, if you can hide this card as long as possible, do it. Like, don't lay it down as energy early if they don't know you have it yet. Because a lot of people will get you down to 5 and just leave you there. And so if they do this, you lay down the Vegeta, take a life, awaken, kill one of their battle cards. It's such a good card. And I mean, to be honest, there was once or twice in the tournament where I was actually at 7 life when I played this. And the only reason I played it then is because I knew I had another one. And so they would kill it. They would think, okay, well, now I'm safe. They'd attack me, get me down to 5, and guess what? Now I got a second one. So this is a really good card. Also, if you don't have the promo Gohans, you can bump this up to 4 and then just find something else for the other Gohan. Maybe a 4th 16. So then let's move on to Kale. I think at this point most of you guys know what Kale does. With this deck, a lot of times you're going to sit right around 4 to 6 cards. So with Kale, first off, you can pop anything for it. So if you don't need this Vegeta anymore, if you've already awoken, you can swing in for double K20, for double strike 20k, and then once he's rested, lay down the Kale, pop him, swing with the Kale. And, oh, by the way, you clear out their board. So most of you guys know how good Kale is at this point. Don't need to spend a ton of time on it. Same thing for Gohan. These two are really good. So if you can make these your 4 drops while still being able to get 1 energy back with the ability, do it. It's so good. Because at that point you're hitting them with critical, and then obviously Kale has her own effects as well. Then we have the Gotenks. This is one of my favorite cards to play when I'm awakened because I literally pay 1 to play it. I have a Frieza or something sitting out from last turn. Tap the 5, untap 2, draw 1, pop the Frieza, untap 2 more, and draw another one. So I literally gain 2 cards and pay 1 energy. It's beautiful. It's also a really strong finisher. To be honest, after you have 6 or 7 energy, you can play this, do everything, and play out a second one, and still have 2 or 3 energy left over for Bloodlust or anything else you need. And so if you get to where, it's turn 7 or 8, you can have 2 or 3 of these out, and that should almost guaranteed be game. So you guys know what Bloodlust does. Like I said, you always want to have this out, and you always want to make sure you pick your targets wisely. One thing that caused me to drop a game this weekend was I used Bloodlust on something that was kind of silly, and they ended up playing a Bobbity, and I couldn't stop it, and they just swung for a game off that. Now, with Bad Ring Laser, I think this is a really good card, but the problem is it just it doesn't come into play enough to really want to run more, because a lot of times it'll end up just being a card that you hold in your hand for too long, and honestly, I personally forget to use it half the time. So this is a card that you don't want to, you don't want to just have it sitting there in your hand being a dead card. So I only run 1. It actually did win me a couple of games. For example, I knew I was about to swing in with the 7-drop Frieza, so I held the sword or the Bad Ring Laser, swung in. They tried to Whis it, Bad Ring Laser, game. Crusher Ball, this is a really good one for stuff like the androids. Honestly, I would probably side in maybe 1 more of these against androids, because with the androids, whenever they lay out the 5-drop 17 or 18, or even the 3-drops, they have those annoying abilities. Crusher Ball them, they're in rest mode, they don't get to attack, you don't have to worry about the effect. Same thing with Kabbas, those are really good. Same thing with Jirens. Basically any kind of threat, you can just Crusher Ball. So finally, I want to talk about side decks a little bit. As I said at the beginning, I did have 3 Frieza's call in for the Sorbet. I think at this point, I'm probably going to just stick with the Sorbet, but if it doesn't work out, I will go back to the Frieza's call, just because I do like having the option. With Frieza's call, obviously, it itself is not a 5k combo, but it gives me the option of, do I want to search for, something else and up my hand advantage, or do I want to put one of their cards in rest mode. Now, the other thing that I actually tried out in this deck for a while is this Piccolo. A lot of people I've seen handcuff it to the Gohan, right? Like, they don't want to play this Piccolo unless they're playing the other Gohan that searches him out. You don't have to do that. This is a 3 cost that only takes 1 green. And it's a blocker. So, like, especially in a deck like this, because you're running Cold Bloodlust, so you can protect it. If you put this down and they try to Beerus it, or they try to Gohan it, or they try to do something to get rid of it, you can block that out with Cold Bloodlust, and then they just have to deal with it. So this is really good against Frieza decks that, or not Frieza, sorry, Vegeta decks that want to have huge hands. You can stop them from having that huge hand, and that really gives you hand advantage. Because then they have to either waste it on extra combos that they wouldn't normally do, or they just have to discard it. Now, a couple other things that I had in my own sideboard for this past weekend. I had one Champa, the double strike Champa. I did have a couple of the Jockos, just for the cell matchups, among other things. I honestly, this is probably just me being bad, but I legit did not use my sideboard the entire tournament. With the exception of these being the Frieza's Call, I literally the entire day from my first game until the end did not sideboard in anything the entire day. And I did not drop a single game throughout the entire day until Top Cut. I was 6-0 in Swiss. I 2-0'd every single matchup. And one of the people that I actually played against made top 32 in Orlando. And I 2-0'd him with this deck. He was playing the blue-green Goku. So, also, he's a really good player. I had a lot of respect for him. So, yeah, this is my Frieza deck. I wasn't going to share this because I was hoping to make it to Richmond. At this point, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. And I think the meta is going to change once the new cards come out at the end of January a little bit. So I don't think this deck may be as good. I don't know. We'll have to see what the new cards do and how much it really changes. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this. If you do, leave me a comment, let me know. And look forward to new videos coming out in the future. Thanks for watching, guys.